Felix is too trusting, my wife Kalia announced to her friends, raising her wine glass with that practiced smile she'd perfected over 15 years of marriage. Honestly, sometimes I wonder how he survived 12 years with the Treasury Department. The laughter rippled across our backyard patio like a gentle wave. Jennifer Walsh nearly choked on her Chardonnay. Amanda Pierce nodded knowingly, as if she'd suspected my gullibility all along. Even Big Mike, my old boxing coach who'd stopped by for the barbecue, chuckled from his lawn chair. I pulled up a folding chair and settled into their circle, remote control in hand. "She's absolutely right," I said, clicking the smart TV mounted on our covered porch. "I trusted her completely last month when she told me she was at her mother's house." The screen flickered to life, displaying our home security system's GPS tracking interface. I'd installed it 2 years ago after a break-in down the street. What I hadn't mentioned to anyone was that it tracked all registered devices in our household. "Funny thing about trust," I continued, navigating to the location history. "It works both ways." 37 red dots appeared on the map, each marking a visit to the same downtown address. The timestamp stretched back 4 months, every single Tuesday and Thursday evening, every supposed visit to her mother's house in the suburbs. The address was 1247 Riverside Drive, Unit 12B. Definitely not her mother's house. The wine glass slipped from Kalia's fingers, shattering against the imported Italian tile we'd installed last spring. The sound cut through the evening air like a gunshot. Jennifer's mouth fell open. Amanda's face went pale. Big Mike sat forward, suddenly very interested. "That's," Kalia started, then stopped. Her perfectly applied makeup couldn't hide the panic creeping across her features. "Rylan Ventor's address," I finished for her. "Your old college boyfriend, your current business partner, your Tuesday and Thursday appointment." The silence stretched like a rubber band about to snap. Jennifer gathered her purse without a word. Amanda mumbled something about needing to check on her kids. Within 5 minutes, our backyard was empty except for Kalia, myself, and the shattered wine glass reflecting the smart TV's glow. "Felix, I can explain." "Can you?" I stood up, pocketing the remote. "Because I've been doing some explaining myself, to some very interesting people." That was when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stay out of it, Felix. You don't know who you're dealing with." I showed Kalia the screen. Her face went from pale to ashen. "Apparently, I'm dealing with someone who thinks threats work better than honesty," I said. "Someone who doesn't know that I spent 12 years tracking money launderers and wire fraud specialists. Someone who forgot that I'm very, very good at finding things people try to hide." Kalia's hands were shaking now. "Felix, please, let me explain. It's not what you think." "It's exactly what I think," I replied, walking toward the house. "The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I paused at the sliding door, looking back at my wife of 15 years, standing among the broken glass and scattered chairs. "Oh, and Kalia? Next time you want to call someone trusting, make sure you're not the one proving them wrong." The next morning, I sat in my home office staring at 4 computer screens displaying financial records, GPS logs, and corporate filings. My coffee had gone cold hours ago, but I barely noticed. When you've spent over a decade following money trails for the federal government, certain patterns become as obvious as neon signs. Kalia had left early, claiming a breakfast meeting with clients. I'd watched her BMW pull out of the driveway through my office window, noting she'd turned left toward downtown instead of right toward her real estate agency. My phone rang. Big Mike's name appeared on the screen. "You looked like a man with a plan last night," he said without preamble. "Want to talk about it?" "Meet me at the gym in an hour." "Felix?" Mike's voice carried a warning. "Whatever you're thinking, think it through. Prison orange doesn't suit anyone." "I'm not planning anything that'll put me in orange," I said. "But someone else might want to start shopping for a new wardrobe." The boxing gym smelled like sweat, leather, and decades of honest work. Mike was wrapping his hands when I arrived, preparing for his morning session with the local high school team. "Talk," he said. I pulled out my tablet, showing him the corporate filing I'd discovered at 3 in the morning. Darren Ventor Holdings, LLC, registered 6 months ago. Kalia's the managing partner, Ryland's the financial officer. Mike squinted at the screen. "What kind of business?" "Real estate investment, except they're not investing in real estate. They're investing in my retirement accounts." I swiped to the next document. 2.3 million transferred over the past 4 years. Small amounts, nothing that would trigger automatic alerts. "How'd they access your accounts?" "Forged signatures. Look at this." I showed him a withdrawal authorization bearing my name. The signature was close, but not perfect. "Someone's been practicing." Mike studied the document. "Who notarized this?" "Marin Hollis, Kalia's cousin. Licensed notary, works part-time at the bank where we keep our accounts." "Family business," Mike muttered. "The worst kind. What's your play?" I'd been asking myself the same question all night. In my Treasury days, I'd seen dozens of domestic fraud cases. The victims usually had 2 choices: criminal prosecution or civil recovery. Criminal meant prison time, but often resulted in minimal asset recovery. Civil meant better financial outcomes, but required proving intent and conspiracy. "I'm going to give them exactly what they want," I said. "Which is?" "A victim who doesn't fight back. Someone who's too trusting, too naive, too broken by betrayal to mount an effective defense." Mike unwrapped his hands slowly. "Felix, you're talking about playing games with people who've already shown they'll destroy you for money. That's dangerous territory." "I spent 12 years in dangerous territory. The difference is this time it's personal." My phone buzzed with a text from Kalia. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." I showed Mike the message. "Tuesday night. GPS history says she'll be at Ryland's apartment by 7. "What are you planning?" "Research," I said, "the kind that requires getting close to the subject." That evening, I parked across from 1247 Riverside Drive in my old pickup truck. The building was one of those converted warehouse developments that sprouted downtown after the tech companies moved in. Expensive, modern, designed for people who wanted to display their success. Kalia's BMW was in the parking garage. I'd confirmed that much, but I wasn't there to confront anyone. I was there to understand the scope of what I was dealing with. At 8:30, I called the building's main number from a burner phone, claiming to be a delivery driver looking for Ryland Ventor's unit. The helpful doorman confirmed Unit 12B and mentioned that Mr. Ventor was expecting a guest. At 9:15, I watched Kalia emerge from the building, checking her phone as she walked to her car. She looked relaxed, satisfied, completely unaware that her husband was documenting her every move. My phone rang as I watched her drive away. Unknown number. "Felix roared?" The voice was male, nervous. "Speaking." "This is Ryland Ventor. I think we need to talk." "Do we?" "Look, I know what you think you know, but it's more complicated than that. Kalia and we have a business relationship. Nothing more." "Funny," I said. "Business relationships usually don't require lying about locations." "Meet me tomorrow, noon. The coffee shop on 5th Street. We can work this out like adults." "Adults," I repeated. "That's an interesting choice of words from someone who's been forging my signature." The silence stretched for several seconds. "Noon, tomorrow," Ryland said finally. "Come alone." "Wouldn't dream of bringing anyone else," I replied. "This is between family, after all." The coffee shop on 5th Street was one of those deliberately rustic places with exposed brick and baristas who took their craft very seriously. I arrived 15 minutes early, choosing a corner table with a clear view of both entrances. Old habits from my Treasury days. Ryland Ventor looked exactly like I'd expected. Tall, well-dressed, the kind of confident bearing that came from never having to worry about money. He spotted me immediately, probably because I was the only person in the place wearing a 15-year-old jacket. "Felix," he said, extending his hand as he approached. "Thanks for coming." I didn't take the handshake. "Sit down, Rylan. Let's discuss your business proposal." He settled into the chair across from me, ordering an elaborate coffee drink when the waitress appeared. I stuck with black coffee. Simple, honest, no pretense. "Look," Rylan began once we were alone, "I know how this looks, but Kalia and I really are just business partners. The LLC is legitimate. We're developing properties on the east side." "Show me." "What?" "The properties, development permits, construction contracts, anything that proves this legitimate business exists." Rylan's confidence wavered slightly. "I don't carry those documents with me." "Of course not." I pulled out my tablet, opening a folder I'd prepared. "Want to see what I carry with me?" The first document was a Treasury Department analysis I'd run on Darren Venter Holdings. The company had no assets, no employees, no business activity except for receiving transfers from my retirement accounts. The second was a forensic accounting report showing the pattern of withdrawals, always under 10,000, always on days when I was traveling for work, always authorized with increasingly confident forgeries of my signature. The third was a photograph of Marin Hollis notarizing one of the fraudulent documents. "Your cousin-in-law is very thorough," I told Rylan. "She keeps excellent records, timestamps, copies, even notes about which pen she used for each notarization." Rylan's face had gone pale. "Felix, you don't understand. This wasn't my idea. Kalia approached me. She said you were planning to leave her, that she needed to protect herself financially." Interesting theory, except I never planned to leave her. I was planning to retire next year and travel, maybe buy that cabin in Colorado we'd talked about. I leaned forward. "Tell me, Rylan, what exactly did Kalia promise you in exchange for helping her steal my retirement?" "It's not stealing. It's community property. She has a right to half of everything." "She has a right to half of everything in a legitimate separation. She doesn't have a right to forge my signature and create shell companies." I closed the tablet. "But you already know that." Rylan glanced around the coffee shop, probably looking for exits. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something very clearly. I spent 12 years investigating financial crimes for the federal government. I know how these cases work. I know what evidence prosecutors need for conviction. I know what sentences judges typically impose." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm educating you. Wire fraud involving amounts over 1 million carries a maximum sentence of 20 years. Add conspiracy charges, and you're looking at concurrent sentences. Marin's already looking at notary fraud, which is a felony in this state." I stood up, leaving a $5 bill on the table. "Enjoy your coffee, Rylan. It might be the last good cup you have for a while." "Wait." Rylan grabbed my arm. What if I cooperated, provided information?" I looked down at his hand on my jacket, then back at his face. "That would depend on what kind of information you're offering." "Recordings." Kalia insisted on documenting everything for legal protection. She has recordings of our planning sessions, copies of all the documents, even video of some of the signings. "Where?" "Safe deposit box at First National, box 247. Kalia has the key, but I know the location." I sat back down. "Keep talking." "She's planning to file for separation next month. The plan was to claim you'd been hiding assets, force a forensic accounting that would reveal the LLC, then argue she was entitled to half of those funds as community property." "Clever. Frame me for hiding money that she actually stole." "Felix, I swear I didn't know how deep this went when I agreed to help. She told me you were having an affair, that you were planning to leave her with nothing. And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her," Rylan admitted. We have history. College sweethearts. I always wondered what would have happened if she hadn't chosen you." "Now you know," I said. "She would have stolen your money instead of mine." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "How's your coffee meeting going?" I showed Rylan the message. His face went white. "She's having us watched," he whispered. "No," I said, standing up again. "She's having you watched. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." I walked out of the coffee shop, leaving Rylan with his expensive drink and his expensive problems. But I didn't go far. I sat in my truck across the street, watching through the window as Rylan made a frantic phone call. 5 minutes later, a black sedan pulled up outside the coffee shop. Kalia emerged from the passenger seat, her face a mask of controlled fury. She stormed into the cafe, and I could see her and Rylan arguing through the window. That's when I made my own phone call. "Marin Hollis, please. This is Marin. Marin, this is Felix Roard, Kalia's husband. I think we need to talk." The silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds. I don't think that's appropriate. Neither is notarizing forged documents, but here we are. "I don't know what you're talking about." Box 247 at First National. Rylan's very cooperative when he's scared. The question is, are you going to be cooperative or are you going to be collateral damage? Another long silence. "What do you want?" she asked finally. "The truth. All of it. Recorded, documented, and legally admissible. And if I cooperate? Then you might avoid federal conspiracy charges. If you don't cooperate, you'll definitely face them. I need to think about this. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, I'm turning everything over to the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit." I ended the call and looked back at the coffee shop. Kalia and Rylan were still arguing, their body language growing more heated by the minute. My phone rang. Marin's number. "I'll do it," she said, "but I want immunity in writing." "I'm not a prosecutor, Marin. I can't promise immunity, but I can promise that cooperation looks a lot better than obstruction when it comes time for sentencing." "What do you need me to do?" "Exactly what you've been doing, except this time you're going to record it." Marin Hollis arrived at my house the next evening looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her hands shook as she accepted the coffee I offered, and she kept glancing toward the windows as if expecting surveillance teams to emerge from the bushes. "Kalia called me this morning," she said. "She wants to accelerate the timeline, move all the remaining funds by the end of the week." "How much are we talking about?" "Everything left in your retirement accounts, about 400,000. I'd already moved those funds to a new account at a different bank, but Kalia didn't know that yet." "What did you tell her?" "That I'd handle the paperwork. She wants to meet tomorrow night to finalize everything." Marin pulled a small digital recorder from her purse. "I bought this today, but I don't know how to... I've never done anything like this before. It's simple. Turn it on, put it in your pocket, and let Kalia talk. Don't try to lead the conversation or ask obvious questions. Just be yourself." "What if she suspects something?" "She won't. She thinks you're too scared to betray her, and she thinks I'm too trusting to fight back." I leaned forward. "Marin, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about the money. It's about making sure this never happens to anyone else." "I know. I've been thinking about it all day. What we did, what I did. It's wrong. I let family loyalty cloud my judgment." "Family loyalty," I repeated. "Interesting way to describe fraud." Marin flinched. "I deserve that. But Felix, you should know that Kalia's planning something else. Something bigger. Tell me." "She's going to claim you threatened her. Domestic violence. She's been documenting incidents that never happened, building a case to get a protective order and emergency asset freeze." "What kind of incidents?" "Photos of bruises she gave herself. Recordings of arguments where she's screaming and you're supposedly threatening her, except you're not even in the house when she makes them." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "How do you know this?" "Because she asked me to notarize an affidavit supporting her claims. She wanted me to swear I'd witnessed you threatening her. And I told her I needed time to think about it. That's when I knew I had to call you. I stood up, pacing to the window. Kalia's car wasn't in the driveway. According to the GPS tracker, she was at Ryland's apartment again. Maren, when you meet with her tomorrow, I need you to get her to talk about the domestic violence allegations. Get her to admit she's fabricating evidence. She's not stupid, Felix. She's not going to confess to perjury on tape. She will if she thinks she's talking to a co-conspirator. You've been helping her for months. As far as she knows, you're still on her side. Maren practiced with the recorder for an hour, getting comfortable with the controls and testing the audio quality. We rehearsed different scenarios, ways to guide the conversation without seeming obvious. Remember, I told her as she prepared to leave, you're not trying to trick her. You're just giving her the opportunity to tell the truth about what she's been planning. What happens after I get the recording? Then we see how committed Kalia really is to her version of events. The next evening, I sat in my office monitoring the GPS tracker and waiting for Maren's call. Kalia had left the house at 6, claiming another client meeting. The tracker showed her at a restaurant downtown, probably meeting with Maren. At 8:30, my phone rang. It's done, Maren said. Her voice was shaky but determined. Felix, it's worse than we thought. How much worse? She's not just planning to claim domestic violence. She's planning to claim you've been threatening Ryland too. Stalking, harassment, intimidation. She wants to paint you as dangerous and unstable. Did you get it on tape? Every word. She laid out the entire plan, including how she's been forging dates on photos and creating fake evidence. She even laughed about how trusting you are, how you'd never see it coming. Where are you now? Parking lot outside the restaurant. Kalia just left. Felix, there's something else. She mentioned a timeline. She's filing the protective order petition tomorrow morning. Then we need to move fast. Can you meet me at my office tonight? Yes, but, Felix, I'm scared. If Kalia finds out I recorded her, she won't find out from me. But Maren, you need to understand that once we use this recording, there's no going back. You'll be testifying against family. I know, but what she's planning, it's not just fraud anymore. It's character assassination. She wants to destroy your reputation, your credibility, everything. Then let's make sure she doesn't get the chance. I spent the rest of the evening copying Maren's recording and preparing a comprehensive evidence package: financial records, GPS logs, corporate filings, forged documents, and now audio proof of conspiracy and perjury. At midnight, I uploaded everything to a secure server and sent copies to 3 different lawyers, including one who specialized in federal white-collar defense. Then, I did something Kalia wouldn't expect from someone who was supposedly too trusting. I went on the offensive. I was waiting in the courthouse lobby when Kalia arrived with her attorney Thursday morning. She looked confident, composed, carrying herself like someone who'd already won. Her lawyer was a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in family law and domestic relations. They didn't see me at first. I was sitting in the corner reading a newspaper, just another person waiting for court to open. But I heard their conversation clearly. Remember, Patricia was telling Kalia, keep your answers short and direct. Don't elaborate unless asked. The judge will want to hear about specific incidents, dates, and threats. I understand, Kalia replied. I have all the documentation we discussed. Good. And you're certain about the timeline? The escalation pattern? Absolutely. It started with verbal threats about 2 months ago, then escalated to following me, and last week he actually grabbed my arm during an argument. I folded my newspaper and stood up. Interesting timeline, Kalia. Both women turned, Patricia stepping slightly in front of her client. Mr. Roard, I'm going to have to ask you not to approach my client. I'm not approaching anyone, I said, staying exactly where I was. I'm just sitting in a public courthouse lobby, same as everyone else. Felix, Kalia said, her voice carrying just the right note of nervous fear, please don't make this harder than it has to be. Oh, I wouldn't dream of making this hard, I replied. In fact, I'm here to make it very easy. I pulled out a manila envelope and handed it to Patricia. Discovery materials. I thought you might want to review them before we go upstairs. Patricia opened the envelope cautiously, scanning the first few documents. Her expression changed from confident to concerned to alarmed in the space of 30 seconds. "What is this?" she asked. "Security camera footage from our home system, showing the exact dates and times Kalia claims I threatened her. Funny thing about those timestamps, they show I wasn't even in the house when most of these alleged incidents occurred." I handed her a second envelope. "Medical records from my annual physical last month, including a comprehensive psychiatric evaluation I requested as part of my retirement planning. Clean bill of health, both physical and mental." Patricia was flipping through documents rapidly now, her professional composure starting to crack. "And this," I said, producing a third envelope, "is probably the most interesting. Audio recordings of conversations between Kalia and her co-conspirators, discussing how to fabricate evidence and create a false timeline of domestic violence." Kalia's face had gone completely pale. "Felix, I don't know what you think you heard, but—" "I didn't hear anything, Kalia. Marin heard it, and recorded it, and provided it voluntarily as part of her cooperation agreement with federal investigators." Patricia grabbed Kalia's arm. "We need to talk, privately, right now." "Actually," I said, "you might want to talk to the judge first." Judge Hale Trenwick was a crusty 60-year-old who'd been handling family court for over 20 years. He had a reputation for patience with genuine cases and zero tolerance for fraudulent ones. "Your Honor," Patricia began, "we'd like to request a brief continuance to review some new evidence that's come to light." "What kind of evidence?" Judge Trenwick asked. I stood up. "Your Honor, I'm representing myself in this matter. I'd like to present evidence that the allegations against me are fabricated and part of a broader conspiracy to commit wire fraud." The judge's eyebrows went up. "Wire fraud? This is a domestic relations hearing, Mr. Roard." "Yes, Your Honor, but the domestic violence allegations are being used to support an asset freeze that would prevent me from recovering funds stolen through forged documents and identity theft." I handed the bailiff a thick folder. "Security footage, medical records, and audio recordings that directly contradict every allegation made by the petitioner." Judge Trenwick spent 15 minutes reviewing the materials in silence. The courtroom was completely quiet except for the sound of pages turning and Kalia's increasingly nervous breathing. "Ms. Vance," the judge said finally, "I'm going to ask you a direct question, and I want a direct answer. Did you review these materials before filing this petition?" "No, Your Honor. This is the first I'm seeing of them." "And if you had seen them?" Patricia glanced at Kalia, then back at the judge. "I would have advised my client not to proceed with this petition." Judge Trenwick set the folder down with a sharp thud. "Mrs. Roard, approach the bench." Kalia walked forward on unsteady legs, her lawyer beside her. "Mrs. Roard," the judge said, his voice carrying the weight of 2 decades on the bench, "I've seen a lot of things in this courtroom. Genuine fear, legitimate cases of domestic violence, and people who desperately need the court's protection. I've also seen people who try to abuse the system for personal gain." He held up one of the audio transcripts. "This recording suggests that you not only fabricated evidence but also conspired with others to commit perjury in my courtroom. Is that accurate?" Kalia's voice was barely a whisper. "Your Honor, I can explain." "I don't want an explanation, I want a yes or no answer. Did you fabricate evidence of domestic violence?" The silence stretched for nearly a minute. "Yes," Kalia said finally. "Petition denied," Judge Trenwick announced. "Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the District Attorney's Office for investigation of perjury and conspiracy charges. I'm also referring Ms. Vance to the State Bar for filing a petition based on fabricated evidence." He looked directly at me. "Mr. Roard, you mentioned wire fraud. Are you planning to pursue federal charges?" "Yes, Your Honor. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit is already investigating. Good. This court does not tolerate fraud in any form. He turned back to Kalia. Mrs. Roard, you're fortunate that your husband is seeking civil rather than criminal remedies for the domestic violence allegations. Falsely accusing someone of domestic violence is a serious crime that trivializes the experiences of real victims. As we filed out of the courtroom, Patricia pulled me aside. Mr. Roard, I need you to know that I had no knowledge of the fabricated evidence. If I had, I know, I said. That's why I'm not including you in the bar complaint I'm filing against Kalia's previous attorney, the one who helped her set up the shell company. Patricia's face went white. There's another attorney involved? Oh, yes. This conspiracy goes much deeper than a simple domestic relations case. I left Patricia standing in the courthouse hallway and walked outside, where Kalia was waiting by her car. Felix, she called out, we need to talk. No, Kalia. We needed to talk 4 months ago before you started forging my signature. We needed to talk 2 months ago before you started planning to frame me for domestic violence. Now we're past talking. What do you want? Money? I'll give you back every penny. You don't have every penny to give back. You've spent it on your boyfriend's lifestyle and your fantasy of starting over. I pulled out my phone, showing her a text message I'd received that morning. Ryland's very eager to cooperate with federal investigators. Apparently, facing 20 years in prison clarifies one's priorities. Kalia leaned against her car, looking defeated for the first time since I'd known her. What happens now? She asked. Now you get to experience what it feels like to be on the receiving end of a well-planned, carefully executed strategy. The difference is, everything I'm doing is legal. I walked to my truck, leaving Kalia standing alone in the courthouse parking lot. But I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. The real reckoning was just beginning. The Riverside Community Center's annual charity auction was exactly the kind of event Kalia lived for, an opportunity to display her success, network with potential clients, and maintain her carefully crafted image as a pillar of the community. She'd been planning to attend for months, long before our marriage imploded. I decided she shouldn't have to change her plans. The venue was packed with familiar faces from our neighborhood, Kalia's real estate colleagues, and various local business owners. I'd purchased a table near the back, ostensibly to support the children's literacy program the auction benefited. In reality, I wanted a clear view of the stage and the large projection screen used to display auction items. Kalia arrived fashionably late, wearing a black cocktail dress I'd bought her for our anniversary 2 years ago. She moved through the crowd with practiced ease, air-kissing acquaintances and laughing at appropriate moments. Rylan was notably absent. I waited until the main auction began, when everyone's attention was focused on the stage. Then I approached the audiovisual technician, a college kid named Danny, who was manning the projection controls. "Excuse me," I said, showing him my Treasury Department identification. "I need to commandeer your equipment for a moment. Official business." Danny looked confused but stepped aside. Federal credentials still carried weight, even retired ones. I plugged my laptop into the projection system, replacing the image of a weekend spa package with something far more interesting. A GPS tracking map showing 37 visits to Rylan Ventor's apartment. The murmur of conversation died as people realized what they were looking at. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, taking the microphone from the startled auctioneer, "I apologize for the interruption, but I thought you should know that my wife has been very busy with her real estate business lately." Kalia was frozen near the front of the room, her face a mask of horror. I clicked to the next slide, bank records showing the shell company transfers. 2.3 million in fraudulent transfers over 4 years. Quite an impressive operation. Another click. Photographs of the forged signature documents. My wife is very talented. She's been practicing my signature for months. Almost got it right. The room was completely silent now. I could see people pulling out their phones, some recording, others probably texting friends who weren't there. Click. Audio waveform display. This is my personal favorite. a recording of Kalia explaining to her co-conspirators how to fabricate domestic violence allegations. Would you like to hear it? Felix, stop! Kalia's voice cut through the silence. She was standing now, her composure completely shattered. Please, not here, not like this. Why not here? I asked. You've been lying to these people for months, telling them I was abusive, unstable, dangerous. Don't they deserve to hear the truth? I pressed play on the audio file. Marin's recording filled the room through the sound system. The key is making it look like escalation, Kalia's voice said clearly. Start with verbal threats, then move to physical intimidation. The bruises need to look fresh, but not too severe. We want sympathy, not skepticism. Someone in the crowd gasped. I saw Jennifer Walsh cover her mouth with her hand. And if he tries to fight back legally? Marin's recorded voice asked. He won't, Kalia replied with a laugh. He's too trusting. He still thinks this is about our marriage falling apart. He has no idea we've been planning this for over a year. I stopped the recording and looked out at the crowd. Questions? The silence stretched for another few seconds, then erupted into chaos. People were standing, talking loudly, pointing at Kalia. Several were already heading for the exits. Amanda Pierce, one of Kalia's closest friends, stood up near the front. Kalia, is this true? Kalia looked around the room desperately, searching for a sympathetic face. She found none. It's more complicated than Felix is making it sound, she said finally. How is fraud complicated? Called out someone from the back of the room. How is lying about domestic violence complicated? Added another voice. I unplugged my laptop and handed the microphone back to the auctioneer. Sorry for the interruption. Please continue with your regularly scheduled programming. As I walked toward the exit, I passed Kalia's table. She grabbed my arm as I went by. You've destroyed everything, she whispered. My career, my reputation, my relationships, everything. I looked down at her hand on my jacket, then back at her face. No, Kalia, you destroyed everything. I just made sure everyone else knew about it. I gently removed her hand from my arm. Enjoy the rest of the auction. I hear they're raffling off a weekend getaway, though you might want to check if it's somewhere that doesn't have an extradition treaty. I left Kalia sitting alone at her table while 300 of her peers processed what they'd just learned. By the time I reached my truck, the first news van was pulling into the parking lot. My phone was buzzing with text messages, but I ignored them. I had one more stop to make tonight. Rylan Ventor's luxury apartment building looked different in the dark. Less impressive, more like what it really was, an overpriced box designed to make insecure people feel successful. The doorman recognized me from my surveillance visits. Mr. Roard? Mr. Ventor isn't expecting you, is he? No, I said, but I think he'll want to see me anyway. I took the elevator to the 12th floor, walked to Unit 12B, and knocked on the door. Rylan answered, wearing a bathrobe and the expression of barely controlled panic. Felix. I was about to call you. Were you? How thoughtful. I pushed past him into the apartment. Nice place. Very modern. Very expensive. Too bad you won't be able to afford it much longer. The apartment was exactly what I'd expected. All surface. No substance. Expensive furniture that looked like it came from a showroom. Abstract art that said nothing. A kitchen that had never been used for actual cooking. Felix, look, I know you're angry, but we can work this out. I'll give you back everything, every penny. Will you? That's interesting because according to your bank records, you've spent most of it. The Tesla, this apartment, that vacation to Europe last month. Kind of hard to give back money you've already blown on lifestyle upgrades. Rylan sat down heavily on his designer couch. What do you want? I want you to understand something very clearly. The federal prosecutors I used to work with don't negotiate with people who steal retirement funds. They especially don't negotiate with people who help fabricate domestic violence allegations. I didn't know about the domestic violence thing. That was all Kalia's idea. Really, because I have recordings that suggest otherwise. I pulled out my phone, playing a brief clip from Marin's longer recording. Ryland's voice came through clearly. If he gets suspicious, we can always claim he's been threatening us. Make him look unstable. Ryland's face went white. Where did you get that? Marin's very thorough. She recorded everything, just like Kalia taught her to. I put the phone away. The question now is what you're going to do about it. I'll testify. I'll tell them everything. Kalia planned the whole thing. I just went along with it. That's a start. But testimony isn't enough. I want documentation. Every email, every text message, every piece of evidence that shows how this conspiracy developed. And if I cooperate? Then maybe you'll only serve 10 years instead of 20. Federal judges appreciate cooperation, but they don't forget wire fraud. I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. You know what the really sad part is, Rylan? If you'd just asked me for money, I probably would have helped you. I'm a generous person. Too trusting, as my wife likes to say. Felix, I'm sorry. I really am. I never meant for it to go this far. No, you just meant to steal my retirement and frame me for domestic violence. Perfectly reasonable goals. I turned back to face him. You have until tomorrow morning to deliver everything to the FBI field office. After that, I stop being cooperative and start being vindictive. What's the difference? Cooperative means I let the justice system handle this. Vindictive means I make sure everyone you've ever done business with knows exactly what kind of person you are. I walked to the door, then paused. Oh, and Rylan, you might want to start looking for a new place to live. I have a feeling your landlord is going to be very interested in your recent legal troubles. As I waited for the elevator, I could hear Rylan on the phone behind his closed door, probably calling Kalia to compare notes on their rapidly deteriorating situation. The elevator arrived and I stepped inside, pressing the button for the parking garage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to demonstrate just how much I'd learned from 15 years of being too trusting. But tonight, I was satisfied with the progress we'd made. The coordinates of revenge were becoming very clear indeed. 6 months later, I sat in my new office overlooking the lake, reading the final sentencing report. Kalia had received 47 months in federal prison, plus restitution requirements that would follow her for the rest of her life. Rylan got 36 months, with supervised release and a prohibition on working in any financial capacity. Marin received probation and community service in exchange for her cooperation. She'd lost her notary license, but avoided prison time. The real estate agency had fired Kalia immediately after the charity auction incident. The state bar had suspended both attorneys who'd helped facilitate the fraud. Judge Trenwick had personally recommended enhanced penalties for anyone who tried to abuse the domestic violence protection system. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it automatically, but something made me check the message first. The coordinates have changed, but the destination remains the same. I smiled, deleted the message, and went back to my work. Let them play their games. I'd already won the only victory that mattered. I'd proven that being too trusting wasn't a weakness. It was just good camouflage for being very, very smart. The GPS tracker on my desk showed a single red dot, my current location, my chosen coordinates, exactly where I belonged.